Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I'm going to talk a bit more about the loss to Brighton to start the season, and I'm going to talk about what has been a manic, incredible, in a very bad way, horrifying Monday from a transfer news perspective, because there's a lot to unpack and a lot that I want to basically discuss and go over about where things are at and exactly what is happening at this point in time. Today's video is sponsored by OneFootball. We've teamed up with OneFootball to help bring you the best in football news. If you're looking to keep up with everything going on these days, and it is a lot, download the OneFootball app today for free. Their easy-to-use app is clean and attractive. You can see the latest transfers, top news curated for you, match scores live as they're ongoing and the games kick off into full steam, streaming without subscription, and so much more, all built and personalized for your interests. Click the link in the description below today to download OneFootball and get all your football news, aside from the Muppetiers, of course, all in one place. So, getting into this overall, and first, I'm just going to talk about the game, because I just want to talk about a few things, get it kind of out of my head entirely before I move on to the enormous amount of news and things that have come out today and what I've been told as well. My take on the game is pretty simple. I thought in general there were good ideas. I thought United actually played pretty well at times as a group, despite not having so great moments. I think that they created a few good chances. Bruno should have scored. Rashford should have scored. I think there was actually 2 or 3 goals in there that were just missed. I don't think Brighton did anything particularly special. They didn't have United under a ton of pressure for sustained periods of the game. It wasn't like last year. It wasn't like many of the games where we just looked like the non-dominant team. There was obviously a movement towards a more dominant style. Created a few chances, should have scored a couple goals in the first half at least, and one in the second. The system was there. You could see what they were trying to do. However, the concern that I have is, once again, the goals were as a result of predictable mistakes that somehow still cannot be corrected, and in my personal opinion, should have been identified in preseason. It's not like a big jump on Ten Hag, but point being, what should be identified and fixed. There was no striker, and of course then no striker in the box, which forced our team to change to make up for it. Now, there's nothing Ten Hag could mostly do about that outside of playing Elanga with Rashford up front, which he obviously decided wasn't the right play. But we've known this for months, all season, years. It may not be solved, and that this year the solution being mentioned right now is a piece of shit, frankly, racist player who United should not be looking at, is kind of unacceptable to me. But it's obviously understood that a striker is a big issue. The fact, I've been saying it for months, the fact that we went into the first game and it basically threw off the entire plan shouldn't be a surprise. There were horrible mistakes in midfield, bad organization, and frankly, the continuous use of McTominay in a system that requires him to do things he has no skill set for will cause us to fail. Obviously, if we get Frenkie de Jong and a properly organized the midfield, this can be solved this year. However, I'll say it again, my concern overall, Frenkie de Jong will not fix the defensive issues that we've seen. Fred had a bad game, but neither goal came as a result of his passing, which would be where you'd expect Frenkie de Jong to improve things. He made some very bad passes, but recovered them in most instances and worked hard. The first goal was down to poor distribution from David De Gea, who did not pass to Maguire, who kicked it long, and then Scott decided to try to run forward, lost the ball, didn't track back. And then losing the ball down the wing with Dalot being caught up the field, and Dalot and McTominay once again not tracking back and helping to provide numbers to where United were in a position of being overmatched on numbers or evenly matched on numbers, which is an advantage to the attack. You always want to outnumber in defense, not have the same numbers or definitely not fewer numbers. And again, I said in my preseason video, Scott was the most disappointing player in preseason as he does not seem to grasp the system at all. Players can make mistakes and have bad games. Fred had a bad game. I thought Dalot had a bad game. Rashford missed some chances. A lot of players not that influential. But Scott has no idea what he's doing in this midfield. De Jong isn't some Superman defender. Will still concede those goals until they get someone like a Rice or a play breaker in there as well. But we'll probably score more goals and have better creation progression. I think that you'll find very quickly that if De Jong comes in, it's going to be hard to play him with Eriksen and Bruno, simply because there's nobody there with a high engine for defensive work rate, and it'll still keep possibly Fred in the team doing that. However, with or without De Jong, I firmly believe that a striker will have more impact on the team, even if it's just Martial in form, so long as it pushes Eriksen into the midfield. It's not perfect. We'll still give up chances, like I said, long term, but I think pushing Eriksen in the midfield, if you played Eriksen where Scott played yesterday, I think you win that game, guaranteed. With a striker up front, I think you win it. You could see the difference once Ronaldo came in and you actually had a striker, and especially once Scott came off and Van de Beek came in and had some influence and Eriksen was deeper, huge difference. But we will require if we do not get De Jong now, it'll require a big-time midfielder next summer, and that will be the saga. And if we don't get a striker, then we'll need both, and we will not get a big midfielder and striker next summer. We needed on this, we have neither. So that's where I have huge concerns about the overall transfer strategy. In some ways, to provide a little bit of positivity, a little bit of coping, losing in the opening game can be a good thing. We won the openers big under Ollie a couple times. Chelsea 4-0 leads last year, and it created a lot of confirmation bias where it seems like we were sure we had it right, had the setup right, the structure right, the system right, the game right, when we didn't. When the start of 2021 went poorly, we were forced to change and adjust, and it resulted in a much better season. We started off with some big losses, and they adjusted, and we ended up actually playing really well for a long period of time there. It's kind of like you have to then introspect and say, all right, we've got to fix up, rather than kind of just settling in and saying, let's continue what we're doing, we've got it right. So it's better now than later. But the final thing that I want to mention about the game is the biggest concern I have about United, the players right now, because I think there's a lot of quality in there. When I was noticing this, I kept thinking about it. I was like, why does it feel off? Why is the mood bad? Why is it off? I watched Man City. I watched Liverpool. I went and I watched some replays of old games under, Sir Alex and such. And people talk about, they don't know how to play. They don't know how to pass. They don't know how to do this. They don't know how to do that. I honestly don't think it's that. I really don't. I know people will say that. This is something I thought that there was a correctness that Ralph said at one point, even if it wasn't the only issue. I noticed something about all these other teams. They play with often a frenetic energy, real hard work. When you watch United now, you watch that Brighton game back, it literally looks like everything's at half speed, almost the entire game. There was a 5-minute stretch in the second half, and I think it's when we got the goal off the corner, where it was go, 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 100% of the time, just all out movement. They don't play like that. You watch the game and they look like they're constantly in their heads, and they're slow, and they're not moving. There was a bunch of moments in the beginning 15 minutes of the game where I watched Dalot, and I called it cowardice to me, and I feel that way, and it's what bothers me about McTominay. Dalot would get on the ball, and instead of getting up the field, going forward, making the run, making the pass, it's hesitation, and then it goes backwards. And Dalot had a really poor passing stats overall. He basically, on that expected threat thing that came out there, he was in the negatives alongside McTominay. McTominay's the same. But I watch them, and it's they have one speed, and it's 60%. A lot of the players, they run at 60%, tracking back 60%, running forward 60%, moving on the ball 60%. And that's why I said that there's laziness that I see, and I'm not sure if it's laziness, but it is. And so I don't know, exactly what the reason for that is. One, I tweeted this out, but one could give the excuse of their learning. There were times under Oli where they played like this. When it was good, they played like this. Tons of energy, tons of running. Not recently. And for the last couple of years, it's been dropping off. And last year was non-existent. And I was reminded of the fact that, I remember why Cavani was so fun to watch for United and what stood out about him. It's not ability. It's not technical quality. It's not these things. It's when you watched Edison Cavani play, and it's amazing because he was not even a committed player. He barely showed up. But when you watched him play for United, what stood out? Every moment he played, it was like win or die. All game. Every minute. He'd come on and he would just go. And he stood out among everyone else as someone who would just go for it. Every second. Where is that? I don't see that now. I don't see anybody doing that. At most, again, this is, I think, partly why, again, that I like specifically, say Fred, for example, why I'm like, why do I like him? Well, one of the reasons is he does that. He does that constantly. One of the only players who does that. I'm not saying he's good enough. I'm not saying he doesn't make mistakes. He has bad games, and in an ideal side, you replace him in the long term too. And people used to make fun of it, talk about, his Passion FC under Ole and all that. The problem is, our results fell off when that stopped. And it's not the only thing you need. But people talk about McTominay plays because of passion. Where? I didn't see it. I see him jogging back constantly. I see him running at 60% the entire game. I don't see him rushing into everything. You watch some of the youth players play. It's not like that. Watch them play in the Youth Cup they won last year. It's not like that. They go for it. You watch Chelsea play. You watch City play. You watch Liverpool play, especially Liverpool. It's frenetic. City slow things down plenty at times. But there are sustained moments when they just go. And that's usually when they're scoring. And United don't have that. And people say, well, see, look, Ralph told the truth about everything. And I said I didn't like Ralph and it was good for them to get rid of him. I think there's a fair representation of things. I said it through the whole year as well. I said that Ralph said a lot of the right things. What he said is true. A lot of what he said is true. I said he was saying the right things, doing the right things, but his actions did not match it up, and that was the problem. He talked the talk, but he was incredibly underwhelming as a coach, unfortunately, and that was his downfall. If he'd been brought in purely as a consultant, great, but as a coach, he did horrible things that don't make any sense. And that was the downfall for Ralph Rangnick. I've said many times what he said in his press conferences and publicly were all the right things. But you can't say those things and then not act on them in the locker room. And if you don't have the authority to act on them in the locker room, fine. But some of the things he did were just very bad, very poor, and I didn't think he cared. I thought he was protecting himself by saying things that were true, but unfortunately it just didn't work out. So, that's how I will feel. I feel about what's happened, what's been done, where things are at, and where they're going. But in terms of the game, in terms of what happened, in terms of what went wrong, but this is, I think that's something that can be corrected maybe as they improve in the system and understanding. You'll see more of that. But I think you need to see that more than anything else, because all the things that you want them to do, in order to beat your opponent, you have to do them fast. You have to do them with pace and power and with speed. You have to attack. You have to go to war. You watch those old Fergie teams. That was the difference. They went to war every time they stepped out there. It was a battle, and they were fighting constantly. Any good team is like that. All the right things could have been in place, but done with hesitation, done with slowness, and that's where the errors come from. That's where the bad pass comes in, because it's a second too late. One extra touch. Not the sprint that you need to get by the player. All of those things are what make the difference between success and failure, no matter the system. It's doing things with speed, doing things with power and pace, doing things quickly, and overwhelming your opponent. And that they have not been able to do. And that is something that Ten Hag will need to improve, because they will not get there playing a slow, plodding style. It's not about that. Even possession sides is not about that. That's a big part of where LVG failed. There was no pace and power and penetration into the team. It was a lot of just moving it around, and that has to change. That has to be improved, and that is on Ten Hag to get that out of the players and only play the players who will do that, because it will not work any other way. So moving on to transfers, I wish I could give more positivity about this, because what was more disappointing after the game and starting it before the game was not just the result, but apparently what is the proposed solution right now. Because as I've said, the striker thing is to me the biggest problem at the moment. I still agree with that. And what comes out is that United are interested in Marco Arnautovic, which is a player that apparently Ten Hag is pushing for because he wants a physical, big physical striker in there, almost like the name that they were pursuing at the beginning of summer in Darwin Nunez. That's the profile that Ten Hag wants. And it's incredibly disappointing, not just because he's a cheap player who's on the downswing of his career, but because it comes out that he has an enormous amount of controversies following him from multiple racial accusations, as well as harassing women at the West Ham team, the women's team, and making horrible comments. And frankly, if you want to feel even worse about it, you should look at the coach for the club he plays for now, who according to reports in Italy he considers like a big brother. Look into his history, the coach of that team. And it will shock you what he has done, what he has said, and the past that he has, because these are the people that Arnautovic chooses to associate with. I think it's disgusting. I think it's horrible. I spoke with many people about this. I know the club have received a lot of feedback about the potential of this signing and why they should not do it. From a footballing sense, it makes no sense. It is not the right player. From a human being sense, it is horrific to even consider it. Moving on from that, I want to talk about Rabiot, because that's the biggest news now, is that news comes out that United have already agreed a fee with Juventus for Rabiot and are discussing personal terms, and that he's now willing to come. I don't understand it, and I don't care if he's a marginal upgrade. We just cleared out deadwood. We just got rid of players who weren't good enough to win a title, who are on big wages, and now we're looking to sign more future deadwood, marginal upgrades. This is the reason United are in this mess. You don't need to buy depth signings. Why are we buying depth? We need starting 11 players, and if we sign more depth, we will continue to just have a mediocre midfield in the future. And even if it's an addition to Frankie de Jong, it is not the right player. This reminds me so much of Saul, who I wanted in some hope he would be all right, because I was desperate last year for a year-long loan. At least it was just a loan, and he was awful at Chelsea. A very similar profile of player who is in decline, has not nailed down a position, and is supposedly better than what we've got. At least Chelsea were smart and only did a loan. Now he's back. It was a total failure, and Saul was a much better player for Atletico at times than Rabiot has been. It does not make sense to me. It is not the right thing to do. And on top of that, then you have news that Šeško's not coming, as expected. Salzburg trying to keep him another year, and they've agreed a deal with Leipzig for him to stay one more year and then join Leipzig next summer, probably to replace Nkunku at that time. This was always, unfortunately, the most realistic outcome. They wanted to keep him here. That's why I said a buy and loan back had been discussed, but it is not going to materialize. So you look at that and you say, good, so next summer we need an elite striker. Well, there's the entire budget. That's the budget. Look at the cost that people are paying for elite strikers. That is the budget. It's gone next summer for a striker. We will not get one this year. So next summer's budget's gone on a striker. So what do you have now? We have too big of a project and too many needs to waste money. And that is the problem with Arnautovic. That is the problem with Rabiot. You cannot be wasting money on these type of players and filling the squad with them. And I have positives with this team on what we're doing, but I'd rather keep it slim. That's solely based, the positives that I've said, on not buying more mid-tier players who are going to clog up the squad in the future. Every single player who is purchased right now should either be a title-winning caliber player or solve a huge depth issue with a young, high-potential player who could be a title-winning player, such as Malaysia. De Jong fits that. Nunez did fit that. Timber fit that. Martinez might. He has the potential to it. Malaysia does as well. A young player has the potential, but who fills huge need now and could be a great player in the future. Eriksen is the level of a title-winning midfielder. There are 6 to 7 midfielders who've already moved on who would have fit some of this for 30 million and under. Young players with very high ceilings who could have improved things. Rabiot and Arnautovic are nothing. If they were one-year stopgap deals, loans, or something like that, it would make sense. Sure, it would allow you to get through this season with what you need. But that's not what they're being looked at for. They're being looked at for 3-year and 4-year contracts. And even in that case, fuck it. I mean, we're not winning a title this year. We're not in Champions League. Why not give the minutes to Garner? Why not give the minutes to Iqbal? Why not give the minutes to the youth that we're supposedly intending to develop to solve this problem for the future? And worse than that, it's often being stated as a likely De Jong alternative. We're talking about how we used to be targeting and looking at players like Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Rice, De Jong, players who would come into the midfield and cement a place as a title-winning midfielder. We do not have the luxury of signing players who are not like that, who are not in that position. This is where it's heading now. I'm sorry, this is so wrong. This is not a player who improves it. Rabiot is not a good passer. He's not a good progressor of a ball. He's a marginal Scott McTominay upgrade at best. And that is not what United needs to revolutionize and rebuild. We're talking about how we brought Ten Hag in to develop youth, to rebuild the side, and build a long-term project towards title winning. How does this add up to that? How does this fit within that? It makes no sense. We passed on players like Bentancur, who ended up going over to Spurs, who is better than this player, and he's young and can improve even further, and it's just not acceptable in the slightest. There's players like Kamara, Bissouma, Vitinha, Sanchez, Chictacuri, Paulinho, who have all moved already, and players like Matheus Nunes in Portugal, who are still available, all fit the profile much better. Players who have young, who have potential to be better, and can really offer something when you're talking about making depth signings or future starter signings. And they all fit the profile better and have been passed on or are being passed on. And it's not about you have to buy this specific player, but this is the wrong player for United. This does not coalesce with anything that we've said. Again, Malaysia, young high potential. Martinez, young high potential. Eriksen, an already proven Premier League player who is a fantastic addition. We needed a deep midfielder and a striker. How do they solve this? How does Arnautovic solve our striker problem next year? How does Rabiot solve our midfield problem? They do not, and I don't care if it's in addition to De Jong. What's going to happen is next year you're going to have, is it good enough to win a title? No. Can't sign anybody because we got Bruno, Van de Beek, Scott, Fred, Rabiot, Eriksen, and Frenkie de Jong. 7 players for 3 positions. Where's the space for Garner? Where's the space for the youth? Where's the space for another top signing to improve this? It is not acceptable. These would be horrific mistakes. These are not the markings of a team that is looking for a long-term rebuild that has just cleared out a bunch of deadwood. This is the deadwood of the future. This is the mistake that has been made by Jose, by Louis van Gaal, and by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, bringing players in who will not fit what we need. There are only 2 types again, and they're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Proven high-quality, title-winning caliber players and young high-potential players. Nothing in the middle at this point in time. It's a mistake. It's a horrible mistake. And that's just where things are at for me on how I view these. It's not right. And to move on to the De Jong thing, remember I've been talking about Sancho 2020, the Thiago fiasco, all of that. And I've said I'll make videos at the conclusion of this saga, and I will, and we are almost there. That being said, the news has been coming out now. It's very ugly for De Jong at Barcelona. As I said in that nighttime video on Saturday, this was when it was expected. This is when it really happens. They were supposed to be pushing this week to force Frenkie de Jong out of Barcelona, and there's a lot coming out that is seemingly making that happen. However, the fact that right now there's news about other midfielders and alternates coming out is very, very, very scary after all this time preaching confidence in Frenkie de Jong or bust. It's not directly confirmed yet whether it would be an alternate or whether it would be in addition, but I don't trust them at this point. They can say it's in addition and Cade, we'll still try to get Frenkie de Jong, but it's starting to feel to me like they're just running out the clock and they don't expect it to happen. And that is what directly ties into 2020. I cannot trust this club and what they say, what they brief, and what journalists have from them. I cannot. It's a very delicate situation right now. Things are very, very delicate and could go a lot of different directions. But one thing is for sure, and I've said for a long time, and I will continue to maintain now, this is why you need a proper recruitment structure. This is why manager-oriented recruitment fails. You cannot just get a manager and say, what do you want? Because managers want tons of players and they're not always right and they will cause problems for them in the future. It happens to every single manager. You have to protect them from themselves and you have to be the experts and provide them with the tools. This is not blaming Ten Hag. He is not the director of football. He's a coach. No other club operates this way. If Klopp was put in this position, he would have failed. If Pep was put in this position, he would have failed. They have incredible crack recruitment teams that identify the targets and players and work in conjunction with the manager. I've been saying for months you need to have the recruitment start higher up with a full recruitment team, and the manager provides his feedback and input. This is a disaster zone we're heading in. It is circular, and it's amusing because no matter how good Ten Hag is, it's setting him up for failure if you're just saying, you're in charge of recruitment, do what you want. It does not work, and nobody has done it for a long time in the modern game. And I can't say I didn't warn people. If we went to this manager-focused recruitment, it'd be bad, and that's exactly what we've done. Inability to identify alternative targets, poor targets being identified, only limiting your scope of players to only players the manager's familiar with. That's the danger. Of course he's going to pick players he's familiar with. The manager shouldn't be making these decisions. They should mostly control who they don't want in their squad, but the club need to bring in multiple viable targets and then get them done for the manager, and they have not done that. What I've been told about that today is following a game, there has been a very, very big kind of unhappy fallout from the people at the board level and in combination with Ten Hag. It's been brought up by people, why are you signing Arnautovic if Greenwood can't play? Which is true. Where's the moral compass here? Why is it suddenly like that? I've been told that Rabiot has not been some long-term target. That this absolutely is a panic, and specifically the briefing that it's not a knee-jerk, it's bullshit, and that it's at least very recent, but they've been keeping it under wraps because they don't want people to be worried about the Jong thing. Ten Hag is very upset. They're having a hard time moving the further players out. The Glazers have been interfering in the process with Cristiano Ronaldo, as I talked about in a prior video, and they're even unhappy about him not starting and playing, in which Ten Hag is aware of and not happy with. Scouts are currently looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. It's a mess, and there are currently a lot of doubts from most of the people that I speak with about De Jong at the present moment in time that he absolutely, feeling that he does not want to come and that the deal is dead. There are a lot of people who feel that way throughout the club and in many, many areas, whereas you have certain people who still maintain that confidence. And like I said, the problem is nobody feels like they can trust them anymore on this information. Murtaugh, Arnold, the people involved are trying to convince for more spending and increasing the budget to get what they need with the Glazers in the UK, and we will see what happens with that. But it is a mess. Let nobody tell you otherwise. This is not planned out. This is not going the way it should, and it's frustrating. I can't give any more positives than that. Like I said, I'm not ready to call the Frankie de Jong thing dead because it's going the way that I said, going the way that I was told. But now it all comes down to, will he join Manchester United before this registration? If it goes beyond that, then it was all crap. And the concern is the names that they're bringing up now make me feel very, very much like it was all crap and a lie, and give me those 2020 vibes once again. So that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching. I'll keep you updated. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next video.